Okay, so this will just remind you of the key ideas involved with conducting a fair test in physics. First thing to remember are the kinds of variables that we have. There is the dependent variable, which is the one you measure, and it is the one you think will be affected by other variables. We call those other variables the independent variables. So it's the one you choose a range of values to test with. You also think it might affect the dependent variable. Finally, there are the controlled variables. These are the other possible factors that might influence the dependent variable. You need to keep all of these constant, keep everything the same to make sure you have a fair test of just one independent variable. So here are some examples of investigation aims. The first one here, to determine whether the period of a pendulum is affected by length of the string. So in this case, we have two variables in the aim. We have the period and we have the length. So in this case, of course, the period is the dependent variable. It is the one we're going to measure, and we think that the other variable will affect it. The length, of course, is the independent variable in this case. We're going to choose a range of different lengths to test with. Okay, the next one we have to determine how height of release affects the rebound height of a squash ball bounce. So I've underlined the two variables, height of release and rebound height. In this case, the rebound height is the dependent variable, the one we're going to measure. And the height of release is the independent variable, the one we think will affect the rebound height. Finally, we have this one, to investigate the effect of thermal insulation thickness on the cooling time of a hot cup of coffee. So we know that cups of coffee cool down eventually, and how that is affected by the thickness of insulation is what is going to be investigated. Therefore, the cooling time is the dependent variable, and the thickness of thermal insulation is the independent variable in this case. Okay, so here are some practice questions. You are to list the types of variable in each aim below. Number 1, the first aim, to find out whether the boiling temperature of water is affected by salt concentration. Number 2, to find out if sand hardness is affected by how wet the sand is. So for those two, make a list of which one is the dependent and which one is the independent variable. Then pause the video and check your answers. Okay, so by now you should have attempted or tried to answer the question. If you haven't, just pause the video and do that before you check your answers. The answers for the first one, the boiling temperature is the dependent variable and the salt concentration is the independent variable. And for number 2, the answer is the sand hardness is the dependent variable, and how wet the sand is, that is the independent variable. Right, so now the next question, for each of these two aims, you need to make a list of all other variables that would need to be controlled. That means during a fair test you would have to consider other variables that need to be kept the same. So make a list for the two aims above that you consider other variables important that need to be controlled. Do that now, then pause the video. Okay, so I think some of the answers for this controlled variables part are as follows. For the boiling temperature of water, the one of the key things to control would be the amount of water that you are boiling. You should make that the same volume each time. Another variable to keep the same for the boiling water would be the placement of the thermometer. You would make sure you use the same type of thermometer, probably a glass thermometer, and also whether you had a lid on top of the beaker or not. Obviously you need to keep that the same. Probably the easiest thing to do would not have a lid at all and just observe when the boiling of the water starts. That would be the most likely, the most telling set of control variables. There could be some others, but those are the main ones. For the second, for the sand hardness test, well, you would have to make sure you started each test with dry sand and then added a fixed amount of water to the same amount of sand. The amount of sand is certainly one thing. The dryness of the sand, initial dryness of the sand before you added water, would be the second one. And probably another one would be how well you mix the water into the sand. You'd have to have a method of mixing that is also kept the same, so that you distribute the water evenly each time through the sand. I don't think there are any others that spring to mind, apart from the container which you are holding the sand in. That would have to be the same size as well. Now, if you think I've missed some important controlled variables for these, we can discuss those in class.